What's up, YouTube? Today I wanted to talk a little bit about home equity lines of credit, or HELOCs. I recently got one on my primary residence, which I then turned into a rental property down in Los Angeles. And today I wanted to go over a bit about the benefits and the cons of getting a HELOC. For those of you who don't know much about HELOCs, or home equity lines of credit, they're tools that you can use from banks similar to a loan, but it's not exactly the same. Basically, you're taking the equity out of your house and using that as a line of credit, or like similar to like a credit card, but it's secured credit based on your equity in your house. So for example, if you purchased your home for $100,000 and the current price is $200,000, that means you have $100,000 worth of equity in that home. Some banks will let you pull out a certain percentage of that, which they call a LTV, or loan to value, upwards of 80%, and others will only do a portion of it. So in my case, I decided not to do the max that I can go to, but one that I knew I could sustain. Alright, so why would I want to get a HELOC in the first place? Isn't it bad to get into more debt? Well, not exactly, because it depends on how you decide to use your leverage. In my case, the reason why I decided to get the HELOC now was because I did transition from my primary residence to a rental property. And in doing so, when I applied for a HELOC, if it's not my primary residence, they're less likely to actually approve of the credit line. And what's the benefit between a credit line and a mortgage? Well, a credit line, you only pay interest on what you use, whereas a loan, you're taking a lump sum out of the bank. So the bank will give you $100,000, according to our example here. They'll give you $100,000 the day you're approved, and you immediately start needing to pay interest on it. Whereas a HELOC, if I keep my balance at zero, then basically I don't need to pay anything. Now you might be asking why I would want to do that in the first place. The interest rate, as you can see, is a bit higher at 5.49%, and it's variable following the Fed rate, plus prime. And the fee, there's a fee to get the current price, or appraisal fee, which is set at $250. Depending on the HELOC that you get, some have annual fees and others don't. So always make sure, if you're looking into it, that you make sure you know the fee structure. It's important. So mine in particular has an early termination of $300 if I terminate within 3 years. So if you haven't noticed, I laid out pretty much what I think the pros are and the cons without having you watch the entire video. And mainly, I think the main pro is that you have access to your equity as you're paying down your mortgage. There's this concept called velocity banking that some people really hate and other people really love, but I'm not intending to use it as a velocity banking strategy. Instead, my goal is to use it so that I can have a backup plan as I start paying down my mortgage more aggressively. That said, if you wanted to use it as a velocity banking strategy, you can get out of debt faster by putting every single dollar you have towards paying down the daily interest rate faster. And the concept behind this is basically you put every dollar in towards the principal, and every dollar is counted towards the principal, lowering your daily interest rate. And this, it's fairly risky in my opinion, but if you are trying to get out of debt, it can work and you have a relatively stable job. One other benefit, you're only leveraging equity that you already have. So it's existing equity. It's not credit, though if you do get in trouble, then you might have to sell your house. So take it for what it is. Otherwise, it is relatively low risk if you use it as an emergency fund. That is, you don't access it unless you actually need it. So in my case, I consider it low risk because I don't intend to use it for anything other than things that I can secure with cash ahead of time. It's more like an emergency fund where I have access to an additional fund, or if I want to do an investment, a semi-risky investment, or it allows me to be more aggressive if I need that extra powder to take on that reward to risk ratio. If I see something that interests me that I think would make a good investment and I needed just a little bit more because I am looking for additional rental properties, then I would have this available to me as to get me over the edge. And then from there I could refinance and then go the traditional 30-year fixed mortgage. Now let's get over to the cons. So the cons of this is that these are variable rate credit lines, which means that they track the Fed. As the Fed increases percent, then it's a variable rate. And over last year in 2018, the Fed raised rates 4 times. This year, they've only raised it once, but it doesn't look like they'll raise it again. So with that, it seems HELOCs work well in times where percentage rates don't increase. And another con, one of the bigger cons, is if you abuse the HELOC or you don't use it properly, then you can get into more debt and put your house at risk. So this is probably should be the number one con, is that if you abuse it, you can get into serious trouble. The third con is that it affects your DTI, or your debt to income ratio. And of course, it adds more debt because now you have an existing loan. And one of the last cons for this is that if the market does go down, the housing market goes down, then the bank can put a freeze on the line of credit because they feel that the value of the house is no longer where it was when it was originally appraised. There's definitely some risks involved with using a HELOC, but as long as you're good with your money and you budget accordingly, it could be a powerful tool in order to get you to lower your debt faster than you normally would because you feel more secure. And though it's a feeling, now I'm able to put more towards my mortgage because 1, I have a renter, and then 2, I'm able to apply more to the principal because I have a renter. It feels good to know that I still have access to the additional money that I'm putting into the mortgage to pay it down faster. Because one of my concerns with just paying down the mortgage faster was that I wouldn't be able to access those funds should an opportunity arise. Say if there is an economic collapse or whatever, or we have another recession and property becomes cheap again. And one of the best reasons to do this, in my opinion, was to get credit when credit is easy to get, when you don't need it, versus trying to get credit when it's hard to get and everyone is trying to get it. Because at that point, if you were searching for credit in 09, 10, it was very hard to come by. But if you're already approved, then you have a better chance, granted, as long as your home price didn't fall too significantly. And since I'm in a major metro area, the prices tend to be a little bit more stable than out in the suburbs. So always keep your location in mind and look at history to see how a recession affects your area. So hopefully this video gives you a rough idea of the pros and cons of using a HELOC for an emergency fund or just as an access to some of your home equity. And let me know what you think about this video in the comment section below. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And I would really like to hear what you're thinking because I've just gone through this process. I wanted to share it with you guys. I'm learning a lot going through this, and I'm trying to play it as safe as possible, but still have the most amount of value that I can get out of it. So it does cost me a little bit of money, but hopefully it can pay off in the end. Thanks for watching.